There is something nobody warns you about when you get older. Not the aching in your joints in the cold morning. Not the way your memory sometimes reaches for a name and comes back quiet. Not even the loneliness, though that one has its own weight that grows with the years. Nobody prepares you for the day you realize your family has stopped listening, not stopped loving you, not stopped calling you by your name or setting a place for you at the table, but stopped listening the way they once did, the way they used to go still when you spoke, the way your words would settle into a room and stay there, heavy with something real. Now your words land and vanish, like breath on a cold window, visible for a moment, and then gone before anyone thinks to hold it. This channel has not yet found a place in your life, and something in those first few words already stirred something inside you. I want you to take one small action right now. Subscribe, not because this is about collecting numbers, but because the teachings shared here are meant to be returned to, meant to be carried with you, not heard once and left behind. Hit that subscribe button now, so that this conversation has a place to continue in your life. Now let us go deeper. And if you have felt that hollowing, if you have sat at a family table and offered something true from the depth of your years and watched every pair of eyes drift toward a phone or a window or anywhere but you, if you have felt yourself becoming smaller in the very rooms where you once stood tallest, then I need you to stay with me through what comes next. Because what I'm about to share is the teaching I wish someone had given the elders I watched struggle with this before I finally understood what they were missing. You have not lost your worth. You have lost their attention. Those are two entirely different things. One cannot be taken from you, by time, not by distance, not by anyone. The other can be rebuilt. Today I am going to show you how, but I want you to sit with what I am describing before we go further, because this is not a small wound. When a family stops listening to its elder, something essential breaks, not just in the elder, in the family itself. In our tradition, the elder is not simply the oldest person in the room. The elder is the memory of the family, the one who carries the why behind the things that matter. Who remembers what it looked like the last time a decision like this was made and how it ended? Who understands that what feels urgent in this moment almost never is, and that what feels small, a kind word, a moment of patience, a presence in someone's darkest season, those things quietly change the direction of an entire life. When that voice stops being received, the family loses its compass, moves fast and certain in directions that feel important and lead somewhere hollow. Years from now, those same children and grandchildren who found reasons not to listen will feel something they cannot name. A vacancy, a question that no one alive can answer. Ache, where wisdom should have been and was not received when it was offered, is what is at stake here. Not just your comfort, not just your standing, the inheritance you were meant to pass down. So let us talk about how to take it back. The first thing you need to stop doing is demanding respect the way you once received it. I know how that sounds, and I know the place it comes from. When the respect you built over decades begins to thin, when the authority you earned through real sacrifice is no longer automatically extended to you, the most natural response in the world is to remind people of what they owe you, to name what you have done and given and endured, to raise your voice and take up more space and insist on being seen, and you have earned that right. You truly have. But demanding respect that has already drifted is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder you grip, the faster it runs through your fingers. What you are left with is your hand closed tight around nothing. And everyone in the room watching the struggle. My grandfather told me something I did not understand until I was much older. He said that respect is not a debt people carry for you. It is a light they walk toward when you are shining. When frustration and bitterness replace the steadiness you once carried, the light dims. People stop walking toward it, not because they stopped caring, because there is no warmth left to seek. I watched this happen to an elder I knew well, person of real substance, real sacrifice, one who had given working years, comfort and health, to build something lasting for a family. As the children grew and built their own lives, lives that often looked different from what had been imagined for them, that elder met every choice with correction. Every gathering became a kind of courtroom. Every holiday became a lesson in what was going wrong. The love was enormous. That was never in question. But love delivered only as correction stops sounding like love. It begins to feel like a verdict, and people who feel perpetually judged stop showing up for court. The children did not stop loving, but they stopped seeking. They kept conversation shallow because shallow was safe. The person who had once been the center of the family's world sat in the corner of every room watching a distance that had been built, in part, without anyone fully meaning to build it. The beginning of rebuilding is this: stop making people feel smaller when they are near you than they felt before they arrived. That is the only standard that matters first. Not whether they are listening to your advice, not whether they respect your authority, whether they leave your presence feeling better than they came. Become the person in the room who asks instead of tells, who says, "Tell me more," instead of, "Let me tell you," who receives what is offered, even imperfect offerings, with gratitude instead of evaluation. When you become genuinely interested in the people around you rather than invested in what they think of you, something begins to shift. Slowly, but it shifts. That is where rebuilding begins, not with a declaration, with a decision to become a different kind of presence in the same room. If what has been shared so far is landing in a real place for you, if these words are touching something you have carried quietly for a long time, I want to ask one simple thing. Press the like button on this video. Sounds small, but it is how this teaching finds the people who need it most. It is how these words travel from this place into another household, another family, another person sitting alone with this exact weight, this video. And let us keep going. The second thing you need to understand is that the world your family lives in now is not the world you raised them in. This is not a lament. It is simply the truth. The truth, as I have always found, is the most useful place to start. The speed of life has changed. The way people receive what matters to them has changed. The way relationships are maintained, the way love is communicated and requested and demonstrated. The language of closeness has shifted. And if you are still speaking in the old language, waiting for the old kinds of conversations that came naturally when the house was full, and the children were young and needed you in the most obvious ways, you will keep waiting, and the distance will keep growing. This does not mean your wisdom is outdated. It is not. The deepest truths I have ever been given do not expire. They are not a fashion, but the delivery, the timing, the rhythm of how wisdom is shared that requires attention. A river does not stop flowing because the landscape changes shape. It finds its way through, adapts without abandoning its nature. There was an elder in our community who had always been the one people came to, the anchor, the one with the story for every storm and the steady presence when the ground shook. But as the grandchildren grew up connected to a world she found unfamiliar and fast, she began to feel like a stranger in her own family. She would sit at gatherings feeling as though she were watching everything through glass, present but separate, there but not reached. For a long time she kept doing what had always worked, waiting to be consulted, preparing her wisdom, sitting with the weight of her experience, and trusting that the weight would draw people in the way it once had. It did not, because the world had moved on from where she waited. She had not yet moved out to meet it. And then she made one small change. She started asking questions. Not testing questions designed to guide people toward a lesson she had already prepared. Genuine ones. What does your life feel like right now? What are you carrying that you have not said out loud yet? Those questions cracked something open, because the deepest hunger a human being carries is the hunger to be genuinely seen. Question asked with real curiosity. And no hidden agenda is the most powerful form of sight there is. Her family did not change. She changed. And in changing, she gave them permission to change toward her. You do not need your family to come to you the old way. You do not need to be consulted in formal tones or treated with the deference of a generation that has passed. You need real conversation. And real conversation does not begin with wisdom prepared in advance. It begins with a question asked without already knowing the answer. That is the new language. No matter how many years you have lived, you can learn it. The third teaching is about silence, and about what silence costs when it becomes your shield. When you have reached out and received very little in return, when you have softened and opened and still found the distance holding, the temptation is powerful. The temptation is to close, to decide that the reaching has cost more than it has returned, and that dignity requires you to stop, to withdraw into the parts of your life where you are still needed and seen, and stop offering yourself to places that have made you feel invisible. I understand that temptation completely. There is a kind of pride in withdrawal that wears the clothing of self-respect, pride that says, if they do not want what I offer, I will offer nothing. I will protect what remains of my place in this family by risking no more of it. But I want you to consider what withdrawal looks like from the other side, not from your side, where it feels like dignity. From the side of the child caught in the current of a demanding life who has been less present than they should be, cruel, just swallowed by their own responsibilities. From their side, an elder who goes quiet reads not as strength, but as something finished, like the relationship has been declared over, an unofficial ending that nobody announced, but everyone understood. That reading, whether it is accurate or not, gives them permission to let go. The silence that was meant to protect you ends up confirming the very distance you were trying to resist. Says, without a single word, I have accepted that we are no longer close, and they believe you. My grandfather said that silence in the wrong season is not peace. It is surrender dressed in peaceful clothing. True elder stays in the current even when the current pushes back. Because staying is itself a teaching. It says, I am still here. I am not finished with us. Whatever space has grown between us, I have not decided that it is permanent. Staying in the current means calling even when the last call was cut short, inviting even when the last invitation was declined, showing up even when you were not asked, desperately, not with the energy of someone forcing a door open, steadily, with the quiet consistency of water moving downhill. The families that find their way back to one another almost never come back because of a single dramatic conversation. They come back because one person kept the connection alive through the long, dry, cold seasons. One person continued to knock softly on a door that stayed closed longer than it should have. One morning the door opened. Not because anything dramatic had happened, because the person on the other side finally felt safe enough to open it. Be the one who keeps knocking, gently, steadily, without losing yourself in the waiting. We are at the heart of this teaching now. If you are still here, that tells me something real about you. It tells me you are not looking for easy comfort. You are looking for something true. So before I share what I believe is the most important teaching in everything I have spoken today, do this one thing: activate the notification bell on this channel, because what comes next week and the week after is part of the same conversation we are having right now. You do not want to miss the next piece of it. Hit that bell and stay with me. The fourth teaching is the one I have watched quietly change families that had stopped believing they could change. It is the simplest thing I will say today. Stop trying to rebuild respect through words. Rebuild it through presence, not grand presence, not the kind that announces itself and waits to be acknowledged, the quiet kind. The kind that shows up when someone is struggling and does not immediately reach for a lesson. The kind that brings something warm and sits down and does not need the visit to produce anything at all. The kind of presence that a person feels in their chest before they can put language to it. Our tradition, there is a teaching that the most powerful thing an elder can do is not speak. It is arrive. It is the act of showing up in someone's difficulty without being summoned, without any purpose other than this, to be in the same room so that the person in that room knows they are not carrying it alone. Because what people need most in their hard seasons is not answers. It is company. Company cannot be delivered through advice. It has to be delivered through presence, through the simple, undeniable fact of another human being choosing to be there. Watched an elder I know move through years of feeling unseen in her family, her wisdom bypassed, her counsel unasked for. She had tried every approach I have described. She had adjusted her language and asked real questions and stayed in the current and kept the door open. She had made real progress. But a thin, stubborn distance remained that neither side quite knew how to cross. Then one of her grandchildren entered a dark season. Real darkness. The kind that makes ordinary life feel impossible. And that elder showed up, not with a framework for getting through hard things, not with the reassurance that her generation had survived harder. She arrived with food and with time and with a quality of stillness that asked nothing and gave everything. She sat in that difficulty the way you sit in a storm, not trying to stop it, not narrating it, just there. A presence that said, without any words at all, you do not have to hold this alone. Something moved in that family, not just in that grandchild, in all of them. Because what was said about that elder afterward was not that she had offered the right wisdom. It was that she had been there. In being there, she reminded them of something they had let themselves forget, who she actually was beneath all the years of tension and distance. The person who had always shown up, the person that time and miscommunication had hidden from them. Respect does not return in a single conversation. Returns the way light returns after a long winter, slowly, then suddenly, always because someone kept the fire lit through the cold. Every time you show up without an agenda, you are lighting that fire. Every time you ask how someone is doing and actually wait through the silence for something honest, you are lighting it. Every time you sit in someone's hard thing instead of immediately reaching for the solution, you are lighting it. Is the work. It is not complicated, but it requires more patience and more selflessness than almost anything else life will ask of you. If you have made it this far in your years, you have both of those things. You have lived long enough to know that patience is not waiting. patience is continuing to show up while you wait. Before the final teaching, I want to pause and speak directly to those who have not yet subscribed to this channel. If what has been shared today has given you something real, something you will still be carrying when this video ends, then subscribe. Become part of what is being built here. This is not a place that collects viewers. This is a place that collects people who are willing to do the hard and beautiful work of rebuilding what matters, in their families, in themselves, in the time they still have. Is who you are. Now let me finish. I want to say one final thing directly to you, to those who came here today carrying something quiet and heavy, who have gone to family gatherings and driven home feeling hollowed out in a way they could not name, who have replayed conversations trying to find the moment the distance started and cannot locate it, who have wondered, honestly, in the small hours, whether this is simply the way things are going to be from here on. It is not permanent. I have seen families return from distances far greater than the one you are describing. I have watched relationships that had been cold for nearly a decade find their way back to warmth in a single season. Not because of something dramatic, because one person decided, quietly and without announcement, that love was more important than being right, and they acted on that decision every single day in small, ordinary ways until the other person felt safe enough to believe it. The change will not begin with them. It will begin with you, not because the burden is yours to carry alone, but because you are the elder. The elder moves first, always, not from weakness, from the understanding that time is not a currency that refills itself, that spending these years in the posture of someone waiting to be owed is the loneliest way to live them. My grandmother said something once that I have carried in my chest every day since. She said the most generous thing a person can do for the people they love is make it easy for them to come home. Tear down what keeps them away. Ask nothing at the door. Fill the space with something so warm, so consistent, so free of conditions that staying out in the cold starts to feel like the harder choice. Make it easy for your family to come home to you. Not to the version of you that needs to be right. Not to the version that needs to be recognized for all it has given. To the version that is simply, solidly, warmly there. That is the whole of the teaching. Everything else I have shared today lives inside that one instruction. They will come. Maybe not on your timeline. Maybe not in the form you imagined. But when you become a place of safety rather than a place of judgment, when your presence becomes the thing in the family that steady people can lean against, they will come. The old ones said so, and in every family I have watched find its way back to itself, the old ones were right. If this teaching stayed with you today, if it gave you something real to carry into your week, press the like button on this video and ring that notification bell so we find each other again next time. These words travel further when you help them move. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments what is the one relationship in your family you most want to rebuild. I read every single one. This conversation is not finished. I am not done teaching. You are not done growing, not even close.